We have an update on the Mike Brown contract extension negotiations, and let's just say it's not making the Sacramento Kings look too good. We'll break it all down right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all off-season long. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. You know how big of a supporter I am of Mike Brown. I believe that Mike Brown absolutely is the coach of the future for the Sacramento Kings. I think the stability of having a consistent head coach for hopefully a long period of time is exactly what the doctor ordered for this organization. But apparently, maybe they don't want to take their medicine that's being given to them, blessed upon them in so many ways. Look, this Mike Brown contract situation it's made a little more dramatic by yours truly and by the reports, including the latest report today that I'll read for you in just a second. Because in reality, these are ongoing negotiations, right? And I've been consistent and I'll stay consistent with my belief that a deal is going to get done. It just makes too much sense for a long-term partnership to be signed between the Sacramento Kings and Mike Brown. But the fact that there's a little bit of doubt and the Kings are allowing a little bit of doubt to creep in by their hesitancy to extend Mike Brown now based off of last season, which had a lot to do with things Mike can't control, things that Monty McNair and the front office are supposed to control. And based off of the history of the Sacramento Kings, not only of being an inept organization that had the longest playoff drought in NBA history, but the fact that they have been horrendous when it comes to the hiring and handling of head coaches over that 16-season playoff drought. Yeah, that plants a little bit of a seed of doubt in the head of myself, in many Sacramento Kings fans' heads too. Maybe we're giving it too much thought. Maybe we're allowing our PTSD of the past to affect what is essentially a separate ongoing negotiation. This Mike Brown contract extension does not have anything to do with the Kings' history, but the Kings cannot remove their history from their reputation in conversations like this. And they had, in my opinion, an easy opportunity to commit to Mike and to let it be known, not just in Sacramento, but to the entire NBA world that, yes, the Kings missed the playoffs this past season. Yes, they won 2 fewer games than the season before, but they believe in their direction. They like where they're going. And more importantly, they commit to Mike Brown and recognize and honor Mike Brown as a central, pivotal figure in the revitalization of this organization. They didn't do that. They didn't take that route. And now we get this report today from Mark Stein. Extension talks for Sacramento's Mike Brown have broken down as Brown enters the final guaranteed season of his original 4-year deal. The sides hold what has been described as a mutual option for 2025-26. Yet it appears that the combination of Brown's desire for a significant salary bump and the Kings' postseason disappointments of the past 2 springs has given his bosses pause. So a couple things from this to break down. It mentions the 4th-year option, which we talked about before, the mutual option. So Mike only has 1 guaranteed year left on his deal. However, there are 2 years left if you include this option. But it's not guaranteed because even if Mike says, yes, I want to exercise that option and yes, I want to come back, he still is not guaranteed that. The Kings can still anytime go, you know what? No, we're not interested. That year is void. This is your last season, and we're moving on from you, right? And we talked about lame duck years for head coaches going into a season where you only have 1 guaranteed year left and you're lacking that commitment from the organization. It makes your job a lot harder, whether it's managing your locker room with guys that might have doubt in their heads that they're going to outlast you, and if they don't follow your direction or if it doesn't work out, you're gone and not them, right? It just is not a good position for any head coach to be in, especially a head coach who's been as successful as Mike Brown has been over his first 2 years here in Sacramento. That's the first part. Second part is essentially the root of this issue. Mike Brown looking for a significant salary bump. And that salary bump is being dictated by the market value of coaches right now. And it's less to do with the Monty Williams contract, that absurd amount of money that the Detroit Pistons gave him to convince him to take that horrendous job in the first place. It's less to do with that, and I think more to do with the contract that Mike Budenholzer just got with the Phoenix Suns, 5 years, $50+ million, essentially $10 million, a little bit more than $10 million a year. That's the kind of money that Mike Brown is looking for, because that is the market value for coaches. And obviously, as the rest of this says, there's a hesitancy to give Mike that because of what happened last season. And I also want to point out that Stein mentions in this report, has given his bosses pause. Now, I guess technically Monty McNair is Mike Brown's boss. Monty McNair hired Mike. But to me, this screams of ownership. Now, I'm not accusing Vivek of anything. I do know that Vivek has ownership of the slight majority of the playoff drought, and the slight majority of head coaches that were here in Sacramento over that playoff drought. So Vivek and Kings ownership's track history, this current ownership group's track history of handling head coaches is not great either. But if anyone's going to have hesitancy to pay Mike Brown what he's asking for, what the new market value is for coaches, I think it's ownership. Now, we could go into a whole conversation about how the value of the organization has gone up since Mike Brown has been here and how he's helped increase ticket sales by the success of the team, plus playoffs and the money that generated and the revenue that generated for the organization. We can go down that rabbit hole. It's really not necessary for this conversation. Let's talk about this first and foremost. Where is this information coming from, and why is this information coming out? I mean, I think it's pretty clearly a negotiation tactic that's more than likely coming from Mike Brown's camp. Because let's apply logic to this, right? Why would the Sacramento Kings want this information to be out there? Now, that doesn't mean that they don't have someone in the organization that's leaking it, which I hope that wouldn't be the case, because leaks have been an issue for the Kings in the past. Look at the early days of Vlade Divac's regime, or really the end of the Pete D'Alessandro regime, very early on in Vivek's ownership tenure. There was a lot of leak issues in this organization, so that still is a possibility. But I highly doubt the Sacramento Kings are letting this out. Why? Because it serves no benefit and no purpose for them, because the optics are not going to be in their favor based off of their reputation and based off of their history. I think this is a total leverage play from Mike Brown's camp. Now, it's important to mention that doesn't mean this is coming from Mike Brown directly. Mike, he could be, but I highly doubt Mike is the one calling Mark Stein and calling these reporters and talking to these reporters directly and going, yeah, they don't want to pay me the money that I think I'm worth. Yeah, they have pause to give me what I think I deserve. I think it's Mike's agent. It's Mike's group. It's a negotiation tactic. They know that by putting this information out there, people like myself, people like you, the general NBA population, as well as media members who discuss these type of things, are going to instantly think back and revert back to Sacramento's history. Mike Brown and his camp are leveraging the Kings' reputation against them in this circumstance, and it is a brilliant move. And it is a move that I don't think is not fair game. Look, if I'm Mike Brown, I'm going to the negotiation table going, you really think you could do better than me? Who's the guy that you're going out and getting? I'm the only one. I'm the only one in 16 years that's been able to completely change this organization. And I'm the one that came in day one and told the entire organization what we need to be better. I have been at the center of the change. You were a problem before me. I've been the solution. You had 0 winning seasons, 0 playoff appearances for almost 2 decades. I come in and give you back-to-back winning seasons, even though this past winning season, we missed the playoffs. I think it's an absolute correct negotiation tactic by Mike Brown. And again, if I'm the Sacramento Kings, I'm not even letting it get this far. I have enough self-awareness to know how much I've struggled, to know where I've come from and where I'm at now, and recognize that even if it's like, if it's like on the surface, being hesitant to give your employee a raise after regression, slight regression, although regression is debatable. In the grand scheme of things, the Kings did regress, but they progressed in many other ways as well, including on the defensive end. But if you want to call it a regression because the Kings lost more games and missed the playoffs, 100%. So if you, as an employer, are hesitant to give your employee a significant raise after regression, on the surface level, that makes sense. I understand that. However, in this circumstance, again, the Kings' history is working against them, number one. And number two, the circumstances behind that regression do not fall on the shoulders of Mike Brown. I know he's your head coach. I know he's your leader. And typically head coaches are the fall guys in the NBA when things are going wrong because it's easier to replace one guy than it is to replace a locker room. But Mike Brown is not responsible for his general manager not making moves at the trade deadline. Mike Brown is not responsible for Malik Monk going down at the end of the season. Mike Brown is not responsible for the majority of the offseason additions for the Sacramento Kings to not pan out. Duarte didn't work out. Sasha Vezenkov, sure, he's a EuroLeague MVP. He did not fit with what the Sacramento Kings were trying to do. Meanwhile, Mike turned this roster from a bottom of the league defense to a middle of the league defense, which is a massive feat in itself considering he didn't add any defensive pieces this offseason that really played and really worked out. He got the entire group to buy in. And that's a big part of this as well. The players support him. The players have bought in to what he's doing. De'Aaron Fox has straight up told you, Mike Brown is coaching me the way I've been wanting to be coached my entire career. Mike is doing everything correctly. He is not the one to blame. Is he blameless? No. But is he the primary reason for the regression of the Sacramento Kings this past season? Absolutely not. So my reaction to reading all this is definitely, there is definitely an element of overreaction to that. And I wear it, and I've seen some of you guys reacting to the things I said on social media, reacting to the things that I've been saying on the podcast and going, Matt, chill out. And I understand that you might feel that way. My frustration is this. The Sacramento Kings are just picking a stupid hill to die on. It does not make sense to take this route, to be hesitant to give Mike Brown the money that he's asking for. Now, if it comes out that Mike Brown is asking for more than Mike Budenholzer, or he's asking for a significant pay raise that's absurd out of the realms of possibility, okay, if that information were to come out, maybe I understand their side a little bit more. But from what I understand, that's not the circumstance. Mike just wants to be paid the market value of head coaches today based off of the job that he's doing for an organization that could not find anybody else to do it correctly like he has. It's a dumb hill for the Kings to die on, and it invites unnecessary criticism. It invites unnecessary uncertainty, and I think that's the biggest thing here. It's not just the outside noise from people like myself or from the national media looking at the circumstance and going, Jesus, here come the Kings again. Are they really not going to pay the guy that finally made them relevant? It's not just that, although that's a big part of it. It's you're sowing uncertainty. That black cloud is starting to hover back over your organization a little bit because players are watching this play out. Malik Monk is watching this play out. People within the organization are watching this play out going, a year ago, we had the unanimous coach of the year and we were finally on the rise. Now we've had one quote-unquote bad season where it was still a winning season, and we don't know if our organization is going to commit to our head coach. Now, again, I'll reiterate this, how I believe this is going to play out. Maybe Mike doesn't get exactly what he's looking for. Maybe he gets slightly less. I expect the deal to get done. It makes too much sense for both sides to get a deal done. I believe wholeheartedly that that's going to happen. My reaction comes from how unnecessary this whole charade is. It's unnecessary. This is the only context that you need to know. 3 seasons ago, the Kings fired Luke Walton, who was their 10th coach, their 10th head coach during the NBA playoff or during the Kings playoff drought. Right? Their 10th coach, they fired him. Alvin Gentry takes over on an interim basis. Soon thereafter, the Kings get their butts kicked so bad that Alvin Gentry steps to the podium in Sacramento and apologizes to Kings fans, saying, "We played like crap. I'm sorry you had to watch that. That's not who we are. That's not who we want to be." You have your interim head coach apologizing after you just fired your double-digit 10th head coach in a playoff drought that wasn't even 2 decades long. Right? You are the epitome of continued ineptitude. You go from that to back-to-back winning seasons. And what changed? You hired Mike Brown. When the Kings initially hired Mike Brown, I promise you, they would have loved the idea. They would have loved the concept of being disappointed after winning 46 games. Because before that, winning 46 games sounded like a fantastic season. We were celebrating Dave Yeager damn near getting to 40, right? The idea of being over 500 was worth throwing a parade in Sacramento because we hadn't seen it since 2006. Mike Brown comes in and he made that concept a reality to where 2 years later, 2 years after hiring Mike Brown, you are disappointed because you only won 46 games and you missed the playoffs, or you didn't make the playoffs in consecutive seasons. Think about how the expectations in Sacramento have changed since you hired Mike Brown. It tells you everything you need to know about why you would want to keep him and pay him immediately and give him, if not exactly what he wants, close to what he wants, to continue to commit to each other, to be on the same page, to continue on the right path that I do believe the Sacramento Kings are on, even if they took a slight step backwards this season. It's simple, Kings. Just pay Mike Brown. Don't let this process drag out, because Mike Brown's side or whoever's leaking this information is going to get that out there, and it's going to only look bad for the Kings. Whether people are overreacting or not, it's only going to look bad for the Kings because of their history. You can avoid that altogether by making a clear statement. We commit to Mike. We believe he is worth the money that the market value for coaches is because of how he's turned this organization around. We believe in him, and we're going forward together. Let's go win a championship. Let's go build a champion. It sends a much better message than, oh, we don't know if we want to pay Mike Brown after, checks notes, missing the playoffs barely after making the playoffs only one season in the last 17. Get the deal done. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Sackyard Community Tap House. I love Sackyard so much. An excellent place for you to go and spend your summer evenings, whether it's after work or during the weekend. Sackyard is the perfect place to wind down, have a good time, bring your family, bring your friends, go and have a after-work powwow with your coworkers. Bring your dog. They highly encourage you to bring your pets to Sackyard as well. Go and try one of their amazing beers that are on tap, and they're changing them out all the time, so you can get a wide variety of flavors and try a bunch of different things. They also have local wines that you can try out as well. Delicious food from their food truck and their kitchen now. Sackyard is just such a great place. Summertime, they have their misters outside so it doesn't get too hot in their patio area. They have live music out there all the time. They have bingo. They have shows. They have so many different things for you to go out and enjoy along with your beer and that camaraderie. And then during the winter, in addition to a great place to watch Sacramento Kings games, you can go out there. They have their fire pits lit all the time, so it's warm and comfortable, even in the crisp winter air. Sackyard has been a brilliant sponsor of the Locked On Kings podcast, has opened doors to opportunities like live shows and watch parties that I've never been able to do before. I'm so grateful to them. If you're going to Sackyard, if you want to check it out, get yourself a drink and enjoy whatever is going on, make sure you mention Locked On Kings. You'll get 10% off your tab, because Sackyard is your official home of the Locked On Kings listener. Today's episode of Locked On Kings is also brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, it's guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you get your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home some huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Some sad news today as the NBA world lost Bill Walton, NBA legend, two-time champion, former number one overall pick, multi-time NBA champion, like I said, and just one of the most unbelievable personalities that you will ever find. We were blessed here in Sacramento to have Bill Walton as part of the Kings broadcast team for a number of seasons. And I tell you, I have great memories growing up of listening to Gary Gerald on the radio, listening to Jerry Reynolds on the TV broadcast, right? But Bill Walton brought such a uniqueness to what he did that truly Bill made some of the hardest games to watch enjoyable. The Kings were bad when Bill Walton was broadcasting, especially during his second stint, right? Very bad. I think he started in like 2010. Kings were not good at all. And Bill Walton was consistently there and did his job as an NBA analyst, and of course brought his excellent NBA perspective with all his years of service, NBA Hall of Famer, right? But he also brought that goofiness and that sense of humor and that wackiness, and you never exactly knew what Bill Walton, not Luke, his son Luke, who of course is former Kings head coach, you never knew what Bill was going to say, and I imagine from a producer standpoint or even from whoever was his partner calling games, that was probably terrifying, but also if you embraced it, you never knew where you could go. I have very, very fond memories of watching Kings games and just laughing, listening to Bill. But also, there would be times when Bill would let you into his brain, and he would let you into the behind the scenes of the NBA from a perspective that you just don't see and you just don't hear, right? Because we get the surface level of what the NBA world is like, and we hear some players try and tell us and explain to us what it is, but it's a completely different world, a fantasy world in so many ways to those of us who are not involved in it. But Bill would try and take you in, and in his own silly way, just show you and tell you exactly what that world is like and try to make you, as someone he's never talked to before, as someone he has no idea exists, but he's broadcasting to you, he tried to let you in like you were sitting with him and you were one of his peers. And I felt that way as a kid. I felt that way as a teenager watching Bill Walton as a broadcaster for the Sacramento Kings. So, and of course, he was not just a Kings broadcaster. He broadcasted with ESPN. He was fantastic doing college games and interacting with college crowds. Man, you can see videos of him with face paint on or taking his shirt off in the middle of a broadcast. He's not necessarily the standard for professionalism in the field of broadcasting, but someone who was so unapologetically himself and was filled with so much joy and so much brightness that you couldn't help but be attracted to it, or you couldn't help but enjoy it and just want to know what he was going to do or what he was going to say next, right? So I never got the opportunity to actually meet Bill and get to know Bill at all. I wish I did, and I also am too young to have ever watched Bill really play. I've watched videos and documentaries and stuff on YouTube and stuff like that of the way he played, but I did not know Bill Walton as the player. Bill Walton to me was always the broadcaster. So those of you who watched Bill as the player, you can jump into the comment section, or you can reach out to me and let me know what he was like as a player and your perspective on it. But I just felt the need, I felt compelled to speak about it in my own way, because I mean, you're hearing great stories all over the NBA today of people that knew Bill and worked with Bill and had a relationship with him, and all those stories have generally the same thing. Bill is full of life. Bill was such a joy to work with. Bill was so enjoyable, always had a smile on his face, whatever the case may be. But for me, as someone who never got to know Bill personally, but just had a relationship with Bill through my television screen, I felt that same way. And in so many ways, even though I could not pull off the things that Bill does or sound the way that Bill does, Bill inspired me to do the things that I do, to be myself on the podcast, to react to Kings news like the Mike Brown news from today, and wear my honest feelings and concerns and frustrations as a Kings fan who's been through all the crap with you on my sleeve, right? Bill was unapologetically himself, and I think we all should strive to be as unapologetically ourselves and embrace who we are, the good and the bad, as much as Bill Walton did. So, 71 years old, unfortunately lost his battle to cancer. Rest in peace, Bill. Just thank you, I guess. Thank you for all you did for the game of basketball, and thank you for ultimately reminding everybody that this is just a kid's game, and it's supposed to be fun, and you can have fun as a broadcaster on the sidelines just as much as playing and picking up the ball and shooting hoops with your friends. So really appreciate Bill Walton, and love to hear these stories, and hopefully his legacy will be honored forever. He's already in the Basketball Hall of Fame, and he's in the NBA top 50 and all-time and top 75 all-time teams, which he absolutely deserves to be there too. So rest in peace, Bill Walton. Last thing I wanted to talk about, congratulations to the Indiana Pacers. Wait, Matt, they just lost to the Boston Celtics. They just got swept. The Celtics are going to the NBA Finals. You're right, but congratulations to the Indiana Pacers, and this is not said sarcastically. Fantastic season, right? From making it all the way to the final of the inaugural in-season tournament to the great run that they went on here in the playoffs. I know the circumstances. I know they went through a wounded Milwaukee. I know they went through a slightly less wounded New York, and then they faced the basically fully healthy Boston Celtics, with the exception of Kristaps Porzingis, and they got rolled. They got swept. Granted, they also lost Tyrese Halliburton for the last two games. I don't know how it would have been different. Indiana put up great fights in Games 3 and Games 4 at home, even without Tyrese. Put up a hell of a fight in Game 1 as well, but when they fumbled that game away, I felt like, yeah, that was their best shot, and they missed it. So Indiana has an incredibly bright future. They should be very excited about their team. Of course, we have the Tyrese Halliburton ties. I love that guy, and I'm excited to see where he goes next, and I expect Pascal Siakam to be back. So Indiana, I think, is a real deal team with a bright future. I don't know if they're going to be a championship contender next season. It'll be interesting. It'll be probably stressful I have to ask Tony East of Locked On Pacers. The perspective of watching the Pacers next year is going to be really, really weird, because you have this team that made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals, and it felt like they overachieved, but it wasn't like completely out of the realm of possibility. So what are the expectations next year? To make it back? To be better? What does better look like? Does that mean making the NBA Finals? Judging and watching the Indiana Pacers next season is going to be really weird, but that team is really good. They had a fantastic, exciting year, and I just say congratulations to them, because they were a very fun team to watch. In many ways, they were kind of the exception to Mike Brown's rule, right? Mike made it very well known this season that in order to, it doesn't always happen this way. It's not every single time, but typically teams that are really, really good offensively but struggle on the defensive end don't make it far in the playoffs, and certainly don't win a title. And the low-scoring games that we've seen throughout these playoffs have kind of supported Mike, except for the Pacers. Pacers have been there coming in, one of the best, if not, or actually the best offense in the league, right? Putting up a boatload of points defensively, not really known for that side of the floor. They had some good games and some good moments defensively during these playoffs, and I give them credit for that, but really the Pacers' goal is to outscore their opponent. And I know that's no duh, Matt. You have to score more points than your opponent to win, but truly the Pacers were a team very similar to the Kings last year, where they just relied on, if we had to score a bunch of points to beat you, we will try and do that, right? So in a way, sorry, Pacers fans, in a way, it's good that they lost, because had they kept going and somehow won an NBA title, regardless of the circumstances, and done it on the backs of their really, really good defense, I think we all would have looked at Mike and gone, yeah, why did you go away from your phenomenal offense last season? Either way, that's the way we can tie it in and make it about the Kings. But it was a great year for the Indiana Pacers. And I look forward to seeing what they look like next season. Now, for me, I'm taking a break. I'm going on a break. My first vacation since July, since the California Classic last year. Now, it's not going to be as long of a vacation. I'm just taking my family to Disneyland for a couple of days. So I'm checking out from Tuesday, although you might be listening to this on Tuesday. I'm checking out from Tuesday to probably Friday. I'm going to be gone. If something happens, I'll address it either on Friday evening or Saturday when I do my next podcast. But I'm just taking a handful of days, going to spend some time with family. I'm not going camping. I'm going to Disneyland, so I'll still have cell service to be able to respond and react to things on my Twitter at MattGeorgeSack if you want to, if anything else goes down. But taking a break from the podcast a little bit. I need the reset. I need the recharge. So don't expect any podcasts over the next handful of days, but I will be back. We'll talk about the latest in this Mike Brown situation, dive back into draft coverage. I still want to share with you why I am more confident in De'Aaron Fox right now than I've ever been in his career. I'll dive into all that in a future episode of Locked On Kings, so I hope you'll tune in for that. Until then, have yourself a good, pretty much rest of the week. Would love to hear your perspective on this Mike Brown situation. If you think I'm overreacting, if you're right there with me, if you're even more concerned than I am, lay it all out there. Let's talk about it. Do it on the YouTube comment section. If you're watching there, you can hit me up on Twitter or X at MattGeorgeSack, or you can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Have a good one. I'll talk to you next time. My name is Matt George. You've been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.